Hey everybody, Katie's going to be jumping on in a second. I just got out of a quite heated IEP meeting, so I apologize. I apologize for being a little bit late. It's always fun defending your FBA to school districts, especially when you think outside of the box. So excited to have everybody here. I did want just for people to know, make sure if you want your CEU, please make sure to comment in the feed. You can just say hi. You don't have to participate. And then I did post kind of a link to the document that we're going to be going over today. I posted a link also for event feedback. Keep giving us feedback. I really appreciate whoever said my background is distracting. My office is a terribly weird shape, and it's so hard for me to get it in a place, but I'm working on it. So, and then
as the dogs run by barking.
As the dogs run by barking. I don't know. Frenchies are cute. They help me with my anxiety. So hopefully everybody else enjoys the Frenchie show behind me. And then I did also put up a kind of free consultation link. Katie and I are going to start offering some kind of consultation if you or your program kind of works with these kiddos that are our wheelhouse. We really want to get this approach out to support other practices and kind of seeing some of the results that we've been seeing. So there's a link up there for that if you want to talk to us. Oh, that's awesome. You have 4 Frenchies. I only have 2. I'm behind you. Although all my friends tease my husband that pretty soon he's going to not have a bed and it'll be filled with Frenchies. So it's pretty funny. So, all right. So today, hi, Katie. Nice to see you.
Hi. I know we didn't get our little powwow before.
I know we didn't get our go live powwow. So I'm going to share my screen with, I think everybody's kind of got the link, which is great. Today we're going to talk about kind of big bang for your buck replacement behaviors. And I call them that. I've kind of debated between like big bang for your buck and slingshot replacement behaviors. I think I might shift over to slingshot behavior. Maybe everybody can help us decide that today. If we want to call them big bang for your buck replacement behaviors, or if we want to call them slingshot replacement behaviors, because they're all kind of things that once you teach, it almost feels like you're teaching something for forever and nothing's happening. And your data looks really kind of like all over the place. And then all of a sudden it's like mastered. And the kid's using it like all the time in a beautiful way in very appropriate settings and across settings, across people. It's really fun. So maybe it is kind of slingshots. All right.
I heard you say it the first time, maybe a couple weeks ago, I was like, oh, that's a really good way to put it. It is. You're just kind of loading something up for a really long time until let's go. And then they fly.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just so cool. So Katie and I will give some examples of that kind of while we're talking. So today I did include kind of research for replacement behaviors or new behaviors, picking a new behavior or a functionally equivalent behavior, and then listed out some of our kind of slingshot or big bang for your buck communication. We all know a lot about functional communication training. Katie and I are going to talk a little bit about functional communication training on like steroids. Distress tolerance, engagement, emotional regulation. I think one of my favorites, which is behavior that matches the context, because we want those flexible learners to match the context. And then contextual awareness and labeling or tacting, depending upon what branch of ABA you're from. Perspective taking, flexibility shifting, and then we're going to tie it all kind of back into the noticing grid. I think I see a lot of really familiar names, so that's so exciting. So hopefully people can kind of start tying that to the noticing grid, which is really kind of the foundation of the happy medium approach and how we work with behaviors. So,
and we still have the recording of that session up, right? Because that's when I think I really encourage people who haven't seen to go back because, I'm like all about the noticing grid, how it really, for me, tied together all of this stuff and kind of put it into like a program. I'm like, oh, I see how to implement with all of this. So definitely worth going back to.
Yeah, for sure. That's like our cheat sheet. Actually, that was what I was just yelling on the Zoom at the school about. So, it's like, how do we organize this in one easy to follow? And then we've got all of our interventions on one page. It's really helpful. So definitely, if you haven't watched that one, go back and it will pull this one together. I think all of the replays are on the kind of Crowdcast. I think you just like register and you can watch it. I'm pretty sure. So let's do a quick run through our shared purpose matrix, because part of the reason I'm on Crowdcast is the matrix guys, and I want to keep going with their shared purpose of kind of sharing the matrix with the world. So who or what's important to you in our shared purpose? And everybody can play, but go ahead, Katie.
Collaboration.
Ooh. And for people who don't know, I don't spell, so just, watch the red lines come up for me. I think dissemination is always a huge one for me, but maybe another one today is just perspective. I'm really interested in kind of having different perspectives be important in our conversation today. What yucky stuff gets in the way?
Self-doubt.
Ooh. Yeah, fear is always a huge, fear is always a big one for me. Imposter syndrome. Those are always anxiety. Anger.
Like, what makes you so angry about this, Rosalie?
Hang on a second. Sometimes anger does kind of pop in. Sometimes I do get angry when I can't explain myself effectively. Response effort. Yeah. Right. Yeah, when I've said the same thing 45,000 different ways and it still just didn't make sense. I know that's on me, but still. What behaviors will I see or hear you using to get relief from the yucky stuff?
I'm trying to come up with new stuff every week. I'm having a hard time. Not participating is always my go-to. Facebook.
Yeah.
You've like opened my eyes to how I may use distractions to avoid all that yucky stuff. I need to think about it more.
Yeah. Oh, we're just doing a quick shared purpose matrix. So if you're not familiar with ACT, this is kind of one of the tools in ACT to support people in noticing their behaviors. Yeah, to support kind of flexible engagement. So we just run through one of these quickly, just because I feel like it helps us all notice kind of behaviors that we use that either support us in moving towards our shared purpose or away or getting relief from emotions. So what behaviors would I see? And I saw flexibility pop up that kind of move us towards kind of what's important to the group. Sharing.
I'm trying to follow the chat so I make sure I hear what everybody else is saying.
Nice. Yep. Awesome. Just a quick shared purpose matrix. Oh, yeah. Oh, me too. I know Crowdcast, there's a few things about Crowdcast that are frustrating. One of them is I can't change my background. And the other one is the screen sharing is just a little funny. So
that looks good.
Is that better? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone needs it in more, you definitely can. But sometimes it goes blurry for a little bit. And although the research looks up, there we go. Once you stop scrolling, it clears up.
Okay. So I put a bunch of research in here that kind of supports some of the things that we're going to be talking about. But I think everybody knows we don't really talk too much about the research because I would talk the whole time about the research, and I'm certainly happy to do that kind of at another time. So we wanted to really jump right in to kind of those slingshot or big bang for your buck kind of replacement behaviors. And something that we're going to offer that's a little bit different, a lot of, and I don't know how to turn off the red lines, so I guess we just got a colorful page today. Something that Katie and I that are going to do a little bit differently are use these kind of guiding questions. So we're going to ask you to kind of think about the question that we're asking in relation to the individual and in relation to like what you're then going to program for in terms of the replacement behavior. I think that I've found, and Katie can speak to this too, when I have like a checklist, like if I'm following a curriculum or something, or like the next thing on the VB map, or the next thing on the ABLES or PEAK or whatever I'm using, sometimes I don't necessarily hit the replacement behavior that allows me to have that slingshot effect that can hit that behavioral cusp or kind of help them engage in a new kind of pivotal behavior. I kind of find that I'm just like chugging along, like I'm mastering things, but maybe I'm not making as much of a kind of difference in their functional independence. Like definitely making progress, but it just feels a little different.
I had a conversation with one of our RBTs about this just the other day, and I was saying, when we maybe look at a skill deficit that shows up on the VB map and we program for it, we're programming for a very like pinpoint behavior. Whereas a lot of what Rosalie and I are doing with these kind of slingshot replacement behaviors is it's kind of bigger picture. Kind of like you said in the beginning, they're behaviors that we teach, but then they're easier to generalize across settings and people we're finding, rather than those super specific skills we want to teach.
Yeah, totally. And you just kind of triggered something in my brain too. Like we want to build these kind of repertoires of skills for individuals that allow them to flexibly apply them given different contexts. So some very specific behaviors are lovely at school and terrible at the playground. So the more that you can kind of program for that broad repertoire with these kind of high verbal, learners that really, they have a zest to learn, using a slightly different approach can be really helpful in building that broad repertoire. So if we jump into communication, the first one is, can the individual functionally communicate to get attention, escape, tangibles, or sensory, right? So covering our 4 functions of behavior, can the individual actually function, like use FCT like we all know to use across the functions of behavior? And I can't tell you how many times I've only seen a kiddo be able to do a couple of these. Like maybe, a lot of their problem behavior is around attention, but then as soon as they've got that functional communication for attention, then they're kind of using behaviors for another function, and it kind of like turns into like this cycle. So really making sure that they have the ability to functionally communicate around all of the functions of behavior has been kind of eye-opening for me.
Yeah, I think another big one with this I've found is that I really make sure that I see it happen. Like attention is one that jumps out at me, where we have highly verbal kiddos and like we'll ask the parents in an interview or maybe in one of our assessments, and it's like, oh yeah, they know how to ask for things they want. They know how to ask someone to play with them or to listen. But then you get there and you see, and you're like, yeah, they can do that in a lot of situations, but there's also a lot of situations that they're not doing that. So that's why I'm always like, I want to see it first.
Yeah. And you want to see it in more than one place and with more than one person. Moms come to mind. Moms are special humans, to their child. So a lot of times, moms will get requests for attention, but dads don't. And you see a lot of kind of attention seeking, so can they do this across people, settings, all sorts of stuff like that. And then can the individual communicate before exhibiting undesirable behavior? We want to watch for that. We're not creating a chain of behavior, right? Like, can they, before they start to get too big and escalate to those kind of undesirable behaviors, can they use that functional communication? And again, across people, place, setting, all that, place and setting are the same thing. But Either way, can they do that? And you can obviously kind of shape that, but can they communicate before exhibiting that undesirable behavior? Can the individual use functional communication in naturally occurring contexts? So can you put them in a new setting and they can use their functional communication? Can you change the context on them and they can use that functional communication? Has really been huge. I've seen kiddos that can functionally communicate at home and then you put them in school and no way, it doesn't happen. And then can the individual use language to gather information about their environment? That has been a massive one for me. Like information gathering left and right, what's my choices for milk today? How long are we going to be in here? How many sentences do I have to write? What's that smell? Is, that smell going to go away? Is that annoying noise going to stop? Or what is that annoying noise? Just creating kind of a question monster to gather information about what's going on in their environment around them, to help them kind of build those networks too. So,
and to detour us, but also like tie it back around to one of our previous ones. This is where a lot of why we use the thinking in your head versus talking out loud in happy medium. It's for this, because so often our kiddos are thinking things in their head like, oh gosh, do I have a choice? Do I get milk at lunch? What is that noise? And just to be able to get them to say it out loud is a great place to start.
Oh yeah, thanks for tying that back together. Yeah, for sure. Thinking in your head and talking. A lot of our guys have challenges with that kind of theory of mind stuff too. So sometimes they're thinking, you can know what they're thinking. I have actually had a kid look at me and say, yes, you can. You can hear what I think. And I'm like, no, I can't. I dropped the rope and didn't get in an argument with them. But, just that thinking in your head and talking out loud, you can obviously shape that later if there's kind of the context says it's not appropriate to talk out loud or it's not a question you should ask right now. Like, how old are you? You can shape that later, but helping them to info gather as much as they can about their environment and talk out loud is huge. I've seen that slingshot so many things, just that one kind of goal right there.
Yep.
Next kind of category is kind of distress tolerance. I think every child I program for has some form of distress tolerance goals. And just thinking from a human perspective, there's so much that we have to tolerate in so many different areas of our lives. Learning how to do this, again, can be that kind of big bang for your buck or slingshot. And the first area that we usually target for, and we'll do this kind of through assessment, can the individual tolerate in pretend contexts? So a kiddo that doesn't like writing, can they pretend like, hey, I'm going to pretend to hand you a writing assignment. Can they pretend to look at a writing assignment and not get too big or to the highest level on their noticing grid? And then we'll also look at, can they tolerate unexpected context? So like when they know it's writing, can they tolerate completing that demand or, whatever the kind of on the hierarchy of demands you're going to place? And then kind of next, can the individual tolerate an unexpected context? I feel very strongly that if you don't get to this unexpected context, we're kind of preparing them for disaster, because a lot of things that we as adults have to tolerate come in unexpected contexts, like getting in a car accident or, I don't know, the other day I got stuck in a road because of a car accident. I was late picking my child up, completely unexpected. So programming all the way through that, I think is critical. Go ahead, Katie. What are your thoughts?
I always kind of smile when I see the pretend context, because when you first started talking to me about this, I thought that was crazy. And it is very interesting then to go with some of your clients, and you guys should do it. A kiddo who has trouble in a certain area or completing a certain task, and ask them, instead of doing it, let's pretend. Let's pretend we're doing this. And it's amazing how hard it is for some of them. So that it was just a fun, eye-opening moment for me. Giving that a try, months, years ago, we started talking like this.
And it seems so ridiculous.
Yeah.
It really does. But like you can do, 15 pretend, examples, like 15 pretend trials in kind of way less time than it would take you to manage, an hour and a half problem behavior.
Right.
So, starting at that lower level of having them kind of tolerate and pretend allows you so many learning opportunities. It also helps you to kind of change that kind of sticky context potentially for them, where maybe they start to kind of think about writing as fun, or maybe they start to think about some aspects of writing as fun rather than having this, oh my gosh, writing, never, I'm out, I'm going to throw up, we're done. So being able to do that and have them also contact reinforcement, just for even being able to tolerate a word that can evoke distress, is awesome. So next, kind of emotional regulation. And I think it's funny, last week somebody asked me, is this the same thing as a emotional regulation? I was kind of like, yeah, it's tough. Whatever words we put it to, it's emotion showing up in our world and kind of what we do. So how we label that, I think probably depends on our kind of lens. Schools are going to call it something different. Psychologists are going to call it something different. Behavior analysts are going to call it something different. But I think really what we're talking about is, how do you effectively use behaviors when you have emotions showing up in different contexts. Would you agree with that, Katie?
Yeah.
Or you got a different take?
No, I think you nailed it.
So I've only been working on that definition for years. So just kidding.
And I've learned it from you, so I don't know why it would differ.
I don't know. Everybody has a different thought on this emotional regulation piece. So it's fun to think about. So can the individual tolerate contexts that evoke emotions? And then people who kind of joined us last week talking about emotions kind of showing up, can they tolerate kind of easy emotions to carry around, like happy and excited? I've actually had clients that when they were like too big excited, they would bite their caregiver on the shoulder, or that would lead to a quick slap in the face. Like dad would be playing a fun rough and tumble game and the kid would slap, dad in the face. That individual isn't able to kind of tolerate those emotions showing up. And then you want to look at kind of like the size of emotions too, as well as kind of how easy or hard they are to carry around. But can the individual kind of tolerate those contexts that evoke emotion? Go ahead, Katie.
Oh, no, I was listening to you.
Okay. And you want to look at across the spectrum of emotions, and this might evolve alongside teaching emotions. The more knowledge, the more the individual talks out loud and gathers information about their environment and what emotions show up in those environments, you might see that tolerance come up. So, can the individual sustain behavior that matches the context when an emotion is evoked? So, for those of you guys that kind of went through the noticing grid with us, can they sustain a level 1 on their noticing grid when emotions are showing up? Emotions of a variety of, are they easy emotions to carry, hard emotions? Are they big emotions? Are they small emotions? can they use a behavior that matches the context? So if I give an example of, mom's on the phone, and that makes your client really annoyed, like that annoyed emotion is showing up in a really big way, can that individual say, hey, mom, when are you going to be off the phone? Or can that individual shift their thinking and go and engage in a different activity until he hears mom say, okay, bye, and then, come back to get mom's attention? And again, we want to think about that broad repertoire. So we don't just want one, like, can they say, mom, when are you going to be off the phone? That might work for a lot of situations, but there might also be times where there's a family emergency and mom's going to have to be on the phone for 45 minutes. We need them to be able to deploy a different behavior that matches that context, which would be something like shifting their thinking and get engaged with something else, or see if there's somebody else to give them attention. Maybe dad's available or something. So that would be an example for like kind of attention seeking from mom. Can they identify emotions? And again, like, this isn't just happy, mad, sad, surprised, excited. This is kind of a broad repertoire, like that you or I might use kind of in a conversation with a colleague or with a loved one or something like that, and again, all those kind of degrees of emotion in terms of, when they show up, are they big? Are they small? Are they medium? Can I carry them around? Are they hard to carry around? Do I need to get relief from them?
I had a really funny one on this topic, kind of on the topic of emotions yesterday. I don't know why, but where I live right now, it was hard to get gas yesterday, and we're in Colorado. So whatever was going on was going on. And so I was with a client, and I said, what, let's stop at this gas station to get gas. Let's see if they have it, because I haven't been able to find it all day long. I get to the gas station, they have gas, and I got so excited pumping gas. I was like, buddy, I'm so excited, I'm getting gas. Like, I dropped my keys and everything I was holding. Yeah. And he goes, that's kind of weird. I think you're too big because you're just getting gas. Like, yeah, what, actually, you kind of just called me on it. That was like a way too big, happy moment. I just completely was out of my bubble because I got gas. So
I know.
He made me take a breath too before he would let me drive away. So that's really fun.
That's hilarious. That's a great example. Katie, you need some work on your behavior that matches the context. When you're going to get gas, geez, Louise. But that is really like, and that ebbs and flows across kind of context, right? If there wasn't a shortage of gas, I'm pretty sure that Katie would have, used just right behavior at the gas station, and it would have matched the context.
You would think, hopefully.
Well, I would hope so. But then, so you want to think about kind of the variety of emotions, and then, how do you match context and contexts that change? So does the individual have a variety of coping or replacement behaviors that they can use when emotions show up or are evoked? Like, not just taking a deep breath or doing a squeeze, right? I think Katie and I have talked a lot about those, that we use those a lot as kind of like almost like an inhibitor behavior, where it's like just long enough to pause where you can get a prompt in for a replacement behavior. And for some kids, the breath and the squeeze really do kind of support them in slowing their body down to where they can inhibit themselves. But does the individual have a variety of coping or replacement behaviors? So, obviously we want to think about replacement behaviors, that are functionally equivalent to the problem behavior, but we've also talked about our functionally equivalent kind of frame, kind of response to behavior and proactive stuff. Because sometimes it's a totally different behavior, right? Like, if I use the mom on the phone example, a replacement behavior that I've taught there is to go shift and do something different. You're not getting attention. You're engaging in another behavior. But it certainly is appropriate for the context. So again, making sure that there's a wide variety there, not just kind of one or two. And to talk about engagement, I think engagement's actually, all of these are really important, but engagement's huge. Does the individual engage in a variety of activities? I'm pretty sure all of us know that one kiddo that all they do is their electronics. Like electronics is what they engage in. And they don't really have many other activities that they'll do. So if that tablet or whatever is not available, behaviors almost increase immediately because they're just not engaged. Like they're the kids fleeting around, running around, pulling somebody's hair or poking them, or, getting not friendly attention or negative attention, because they just don't have anything to do. So after you've kind of, and I think the best way to think about, the variety of activities is, obviously what's age appropriate. And another piece is what the family wants them to do, what's important to the family, and how would it kind of help that family function better. So if a family is a big, group of readers, how do I get this kid to sit down and read a book? If the family's big kind of board game people, how do I get this kid to sit down and play a board game? Help support their connection to their family or community, or, classroom, whatever that might be. Can the individual engage in different contexts? So can they play alone? Can they play non-electronics? Can they play quiet, calm, and slow games? Can they play noisy, busy, fast? Those are a couple of kind of prompts for kind of what can they do. I've had a lot of kids also that can't play by themselves. They need direct one-on-one adult attention in order to play, which is really challenging for families. So you have any and the noisy, busy, fast one is, I have a lot of clients that love to play noisy, busy, fast. If they can keep moving, awesome. As soon as you ask them to do a quiet, calm, and slow, woo, hang on. So thinking about those across these domains, can they play alone for increasing durations of time? Can they do non-electronic, quiet, calm, and slow, and noisy, busy, fast? And then can the individual use engagement to support their use of the behavior that matches context? So I think the phone example is a good one. But another one is, you've been doing noisy, busy, fast for a long time. I know sometimes when you've been playing noisy, busy, fast for a long time, you get to a red on your noticing grid. What will help you right now so that you can stay just right and match? And this is where they might pick up, a book and do a quiet, calm, and slow for a little bit. Some of those kiddos that get a little bit too slow might actually do the opposite. I need to go jump on the trampoline so I don't take a nap right now. But how can you use engagement to support their use of contextually appropriate behaviors or behavior that matches the context? I think I've got a lot of examples of kind of how to use engagement to support that. But a huge one is shift your thinking. When a kiddo is stuck on something, maybe they're stuck on, I want to play Mario, I want to play Mario, I want to play Mario. It's a great opportunity to use kind of this program to help them engage in something else. Hey, I hear you're stuck on Mario. I need you to shift your thinking to something different for a few minutes, and then maybe we can talk about playing Mario. That way you can kind of reinforce their engagement in something different, maybe less preferred, help them get unstuck and learn that shift your thinking at the same time. And also kind of reduce the likelihood that they're going to go up and level on their noticing grid. So can the individual sustain engagement for increasing periods of time? I think a lot of times we get kiddos that are not very good at sustaining engagement particularly in things that are non-preferred. They do okay with things that are preferred, but they usually don't have a lot of variety. And when they're done, they're done. I'm thinking about a couple of individuals where it was like, all I want to watch is the victory show. And then as soon as that series was over, we would see a huge increase in behavior because he had nothing else to do and wouldn't sustain engagement in anything else until he found the next series of shows that he wanted to watch. Or like the kiddo that kind of, geeks out on a really complex Lego set, and you see kind of like a nice reprieve from behavior. But then as soon as that Lego set's complete, you lose kind of their ability to sustain engagement because they don't have the next thing that they're going to engage in. Did you have thoughts on engagement, Katie? I know that's something we work on all the time.
Yeah, I think the variety of engagement or variety of activities is what always stands out to me. Because if we have a kiddo who doesn't have opportunities to practice shifting between activities and shifting their engagement, what's going to happen when we now have a hard task that we have to try to get them to engage in. So I see that like programming for the variety of activities is for me a way to practice that shifting of engagement so that I'm ready when those harder tasks come up, that I know we've practiced this skill. Now let's try it on something a little bit bigger.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and guys, a lot of these like go hand in hand. Like I don't kind of program for, engagement kind of without programming for some distress tolerance and some of the other kind of categories here. I think that's how you kind of load the Slingshot, is you're kind of programming for all these things at once that really allow you to, whoa, and let's go forward. So thinking about kind of behavior that matches the context, can the individual sustain behavior that matches the context? So that's that level 1 on the kind of noticing grid, or they're green. Or I had a kiddo today talking about hot peppers as their levels for the noticing grid. I didn't even know there were that many different types of peppers that were kind of like varying levels of heat. It was pretty cool conversation though. So can the individual sustain behavior that matches the context when they're, again, experiencing those emotions? We've got that kiddo that school or therapists explain as, 0 to hero or 0 to 100. Usually there's some emotions being evoked at that point, and they're not able to sustain kind of behavior that matches the context. And can the individual identify when they're getting too big? So beginning pieces of that kind of self-monitoring stuff. Can the individual notice when their behavior on their noticing grid is starting to get too big? And then contextual labeling, which I have in here twice because one of them is for our happy medium language, and then the other's a little bit different. I just need to switch that around. Sorry, I forgot to do that this time. So can the individual label environmental events with their 5 senses? So can they talk about things they're seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting, touching, all of that great stuff? Can the individual label their emotions kind of with that 5 sensing? So are they able to say something like, when I smell shortbread cookies, my happy emotion shows up? Or, when I smell dog poop in the house, I'm mad. Are they able to, and I just used smell twice, but, are they able to use those 5 senses? And then the other piece of contextual labeling is kind of, can they label in the present moment? So can they do things while it's happening? And can they use happy medium language, which are a couple of our languages intervention? They're just language pairings that help to concretely define environmental events so that everybody's kind of on the same page, as well as they have a broader way to interpret the world around them. So So teaching them how to label environmental contexts that go with those pairs, those language pairings or categories. Did you have stuff to add on that labeling? I think we create label monsters is really the way I think about it.
Yeah. No, I got nothing else on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, I could, but we wouldn't get through the rest of it. So.
I know. I'm getting better at putting less material in, but it's still hard. So perspective, can the individual, label, talk out loud, and think in their head? Katie brought this up earlier, and this is huge. Can they differentiate when they're thinking in their head and when they're talking out loud? Can the individual talk about things that they know and don't know? I have had so many little humans who get so worried when they don't know something. So helping them to be able to start to put that kind of picture together of there's things that I know and there's things that I don't know. That's kind of what makes us humans and how we learn to kind of develop that perspective. And it's okay to know and not know. And then can the individual create people files? I love people files. I cannot remember who introduced me to the term, but I think it was Brooke a long time ago. She created people files.
Yeah.
I know, I missed her terribly. But people files are basically a way to info gather about others. Do they have siblings? Do they have dogs? What do they like? What do they dislike? What things make emotions show up for them? What are their hobbies? What are their activities they like to do? This helps to develop perspective by understanding that other people, know and don't know different things about you, or you guys don't have the same things, and that's okay. And people files are actually, I think I found them to be super helpful in the school setting, because it also helps the adults start to develop people files about the kids, and then they see them more as humans instead of kind of behavior problems. I think that's been a helpful thing for me. It's also allowed for lots more language and conversation and flexible kind of conversation moments, for these guys. And then, what else do I have? Let's see. So we want them to also develop that contextual awareness, and we use happy medium language for that, which again are those language pairings like expected, unexpected, fun and not fun, one chance versus 100 chances. There are all these different language pairings that support their ability to kind of interpret and be aware of what's going on in their environment. So can they label those? Can they use them to kind of tact the environment around them? Can they use it to kind of describe the environment or around them? And another piece to this kind of later on, this is kind of like foundation programming. Later on, we kind of work to kind of use that to help them kind of inform, obviously, the choices of behavior that they're going to use. But then also kind of like what's important in this environment? Like, what should I be paying attention to and what should I not? I think a lot of times our guys are either hyper vigilant about their environment or are like almost too aware. And then we've got this kind of other set that are, not aware at all. Like they only are aware of what they're doing. So supporting them in that is huge. I guess all of this is big and it all kind of ties together. I'm like, this is all huge. I'm trying to hurry so we can get to where it goes in the noticing grid, because that's where it really helps. So choice, I think, has also been something that we found is important. Can the individual actually make choices? I know choice becomes like one of these big strategies that we all use a lot, to help individuals feel a better sense of control. But can they actually make a choice? And then can individuals engage in manipulate items before they make a choice? So a lot of those guys that just pick the last one you said, or they just pick something to get you to stop asking them to pick something. Like, do they actually engage, and maybe use their 5 senses to determine whether this is really something that they want to play with? And then shifting. Can the individual shift between a variety of items that are preferred, non-preferred, new, and different? I think I've found oftentimes I start with preferred and non-preferred, and I sometimes forget about new and different, but that new and different is huge. There's a lot of, I don't know which field calls it approach avoidance, but I call it approach avoidance now, where kids don't even want to approach something new or different. I mean, change the seating in the classroom and it will kind of evoke a behavior because it's so different. Go to a different King Soopers, drive a different way to McDonald's. All of those things are challenging. So making sure that they can kind of shift between a variety of things that they like, that they don't like, that are new, that they've never experienced before, and they're able to do that flexibly. And this flexibility piece of can they change, can they terminate, can they shift, can they wait for activities in context? All of these are, again, kind of critical elements of being able to function throughout multiple contexts. Sometimes you got to hurry up and get off the phone. Sometimes you need to go to McDonald's a different way. Sometimes you just need to kind of shift it up a little bit. Sometimes you need to wait. You can't go right away. So are they able to do all of these kind of within a context? And then self-monitoring, which I feel like is probably the biggest thing, which is why the noticing grid's the foundation of kind of everything we do. Can the individual identify behavior that matches the context? Can they tell you in a library you should be quiet, and while you're playing basketball you can be running and cheering? Or can they tell you, in church they should whisper to their mom, but when they're at the playground they can yell, "Hey mom, do you have a snack for me?" Are they able to tell you what behaviors match different contexts? Can the individual identify what others will do based on the behavior they use? Can they track the consequences? Can they tell you, if I hit mom, I'm going in timeout. That's not the best one. We don't really use timeout, but, can they say if I ask my mom for a hug, she's going to give me a hug? Can they track that behavior? And tell you what other people are going to do based on behavior they used? Or can they say, if I get too big and start screaming and yelling, you're not going to talk to me until I'm done? Things like that. And then can the individual identify replacement behaviors to use when they get too big for the context? So out of that whole huge list of replacement behaviors, can the individual kind of say what they're going to use if they get too big for the context? And then lastly, can the individual notice changes in the context? So that, again, that kind of contextual awareness is really important. Can they notice when it changes and they have to deploy a different behavior? They've got to use something different. And then rule-governed behavior. Can the individuals follow simple rules with socially mediated reinforcers? So, I mean, that's like first then, or, you do this and you can have that. We want to try to move as quickly as we can to kind of that more tracking rule-governed behavior where they're understanding kind of what the consequences of their behavior are, and being motivated to kind of deploy different behaviors because they know what's going to happen, not necessarily just because they're going to get something cool. I think this one in particular is really important for parents. They're always like, when are we going to get the pass? This first you do this and then you get this thing. You know, I actually talked to a new parent yesterday and she's like, I've talked to you for a half an hour and you haven't mentioned screen time as a reward for good behavior. And I was like, no, I have not said that yet. But, you know, I think we get really kind of stuck in that, you know, in that zone sometimes where behavior's kind of under the control of that socially mediated reinforcer. So now let's talk about kind of the noticing grid and kind of how all these kind of big bang for your buck replacement behaviors kind of fit in with this self-monitoring tool, kind of foundational tool, which is really where kind of the rubber meets the road, kind of where, you know, we've taught all of these things, and now we need the individual to kind of use these replacement behaviors in a context that works. So, and also, again, to kind of build that tracking, right? Like we want them to say like what people are going to see. This is the objective behavior we're going to see you using. And when we're kind of at this lower level 1, or I don't know, I can't remember what pepper they used this morning for, I think that's going to be my new one instead of, you know, cats is the pepper example. I thought it was so funny. So what are people going to see when you're out of 1? And a lot of those are going to be those kind of behavior that matches the environment, right? Kind of that big group of behaviors. And again, we want like a broad repertoire here. We don't want 1 or 2 behaviors that match the consequence or that match the context. We want a lot of behaviors that other people would see when you're just right, calm, slow, engaged. You know, so examples of that might be talking out loud. It might be transitioning when you're asked. It might be, you know, waiting when mom says wait. It might
following directions in there a lot.
Yeah, following directions. Totally. Asking before you get something. I mean, I don't know. I basically could take a whole list of what parents say in our initial consultation and kind of put them in there. So behaviors that match kind of a variety of contexts go in that kind of level 1 zone. And then what other people are going to do, you know, obviously if we're using kind of just right behaviors, we want kind of positive or negative reinforcement in there, depending upon kind of what motivates that child. Actually just had a huge kind of conversation about that. Like if escape and negative reinforcement is kind of what the human's looking for, if you're going to go ahead and give them positive reinforcement, you're not really putting in place a kind of equivalent intervention to build those replacement behaviors. Thinking more specifically about kind of schools and point systems where they want to build those replacement behaviors based on positive reinforcement when the clear function is escape, which tells us that human really wants negative reinforcement. So making sure that you're kind of sensitive to that, you know, what is this human really looking for? And then kind of this, how do I get back to a level 1 is where we kind of pull in these replacement behaviors. And I think the most important piece to remember is there's lots of replacement behaviors to stay at a 1, and practicing staying at a 1 or practicing skills that you need to practice while you're at a 1 so that you can use them when you're at a 2 is probably the most important thing I could say today. Right? What do you think, Katie?
Here's one of our other recordings where I kind of emphasize that same piece of like, we need to practice when we're green, like when we're just right. I think that's the biggest piece I see as I'm training people in this that gets missed is, oh, our kiddo is just right. We're just going to kind of keep cruising here because this feels good. Where it's like, hey, that's where we need to be jumping in and working on teaching a lot of these coping skills so that when they do get too big, they're easier to access.
Yeah, they're easy to use. So, you know, a lot of the replacement behaviors go in that level 1. Like, how am I going to get back to a 1? You're going to practice these, and you're going to practice them a lot. So that, you know, when kind of something happens and an emotion gets evoked and you're starting to get a little too big and you notice, you can pick one to use, which might be tolerate. It might be, use some functional communication. It might be shift your thinking. It might be pick something to engage with. So you really have to kind of look at each individual to decide, like, what is that chunk? What is going to get me kind of the biggest kind of bang or slingshot effect for this individual in particular? I always have take a breath and a squeeze and talk out loud. Those are generally 3 that go.
Yeah, and I usually always emphasize those to parents too, because I say, I need to know that the kiddos have some sort of tool to help them kind of take that pause so they can make a decision of what to do next. And, let's just say behaviors don't always happen predictably. What if we don't have that squeeze toy or that blanket that we know helps calm them down, or the book? I need to know they have something that they can always access, whatever that might be.
Yeah. There's got to be something that they can access all the time. I mean, even for the kids that I put together, like a replacement behavior backpack, sometimes it's not of it. Like sometimes mom forgot it in the car and you don't have your silly putty. It's, or, whatever you want to call it, calming kit. I put the CEU form up for everybody. So just so you guys know that's there.
One of my kiddos I really loved came up with a mantra.
Ooh.
So his brother's was one of his big triggers. So he came up with a mantra whenever he notices himself getting too big and annoyed with them. He kind of says it to himself, and that somehow it acts like that pause, and it really helps him to kind of shift and or make that decision. Do I need to shift because I can't tolerate what's going on with them, or can I shift and kind of just let it go? So that was a fun one that I've had just recently come up.
Yeah, it's fun when they come up with their own, like you might, the form's right under kind of it's in the green thing, right under Katie and I. So I can put it in the chat too if I need to. I think kind of collaborating, saying, hey, here's what I'm noticing. I'm noticing, with my observer noticer, you get too big a lot of times after you've been on screen time. What do we think? Like, what could you do? Like, how could you get back or stay at a 1 after you've had screen time? This is something I'm noticing. So really getting their buy-in to like what they want their replacement behavior to be. These highly verbal guys, they swing on a pendulum, right? Some of them, I don't need anything to get back to a 1. And then, a good gauge of treatment is when they're like, oh, I think I need to pick something right now. Then you've come a really far way. And then you've got these other guys that want kind of total control over all of their replacement behaviors. And you've got to get kind of, got to get in there edgewise and pick a couple because they're missing a few. With this whole approach, everything we're trying to kind of get to a middle ground. Any final thoughts, Katie? I think I actually we made it an hour without me being like, blah, 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 blah. So
no,
I'm very proud of myself. My proud emotions showing up. So anyway, really, I'll answer questions for sure. The CEU started at 2 Mountain Time. Oh, I didn't even put I've got to get so good at answering these questions. It started at 2. I don't know. Sometimes Crowdcast changes it to 3. It's so funny. I don't know why that happens. So feel free, everybody to reach out, jump on kind of the other free CEUs. These are kind of all kind of geared on an approach that Katie and I have been working on for a really long time called the happy medium approach. And we've kind of chunked out to give you guys some examples of kind of how this approach kind of comes together in kind of a flexible way to program, especially for these highly verbal learners, some twice exceptional guys. So, yep. I guess that's it for today. And I have no idea what we're going to do next week, but we'll try to come up with something fun. Right?
We'll do it.
We'll do it.
We got stuff.
Oh, yeah. We got a lot more. So, all right. Well, everybody have a good rest of your week. Thanks, Katie. See you later.
Bye-bye.